So here's today's question, and it's really pretty simple. And it's, is your life insurance taxable? Now, the answer might just surprise you. Picture this. You just lost a loved one. And I know that's a tough thing. And in the midst of that grief, you're hit with an unexpected tax bill on their life insurance payout. Well, don't let this happen to you, because today we're diving into the world of life insurance taxation. And I'm going to share some eye-opening stories that could save you and your family from financial headache. So stay tuned to find out how this could impact your financial future as I answer the simple question, is your life insurance taxable? Now, before we get started today, let me just remind you about what we talked about yesterday. It was a great episode from the perspective of a teller. It was those 10 things that banks don't want you to know that could cost you money. So if you missed it, head over to askralph.com. Trust me, you don't want to leave that money on the table. Well, now let's get to today's topic. I received this message from Fiona. She wrote this, Dear Ralph, my husband and I just recently started thinking about life insurance. We want to make sure our kids are taken care of if anything happens to us, but we're worried about the tax implications. Are life insurance payouts taxable? How can we make sure our beneficiaries get the full amount? Well, Fiona, thank you so much for this important question. It's one that many people overlook, and I'm glad you're thinking of it today. I am thrilled you joined me today. Your trust in the show means the world to me. I am committed to providing you with the knowledge and insights you need to achieve financial freedom while growing in your faith. Well, let's ground ourselves in Scripture as we always do with some wisdom. And this one comes from the book of 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. And it says this, anyone who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Whew, man, that one will cut you. But it reminds us of the responsibility we have to take care of our loved ones, which is part of that is that wise financial decisions, and part of that is understanding life insurance. Well, now let's tackle Fiona's question about life insurance. Brace yourself, because the answer might not be what you expected. Well, let me tell you about a story about the way I look at this. It really changed the way I look about things. It was a crisp all in the morning, and I got this call from one of my clients. And let me tell you, this call will stick with me. On the other end of the line was my client. I'll call him John. And I could tell something was wrong with John. His voice was just trembling with emotion. He told me he had just lost both of his parents in a terrible auto accident. And I sat there. My heart was breaking for him. I'm listening to John, and he's telling me all about what's going on. And it made me think about it. Not in financial terms, but it made me think about the fragility of life and how we all need to be prepared for these unexpected things. So John was not only dealing with the overwhelming grief of losing both his parents at the same time, but suddenly John was in charge of their financial affairs. He had to manage what happened on the aftermath. So here's where things took an interesting turn. Now, the good news is John's parents had great foresight. They had purchased substantial life insurance policies. And John, being the only child, was named as the sole beneficiary. So after we got past the grief part and John and I sat down, we started looking at the details. And one day, John asked me a simple question. He says, Ralph, will I have to pay taxes on this insurance payout? Now, as he said it, I could hear his voice. He was tensed up. He was so worried about it. And I just said to him, no, John, in most cases, life insurance proceeds are not taxable. Well, you could see the relief on his face. You could tell in his voice that was one less thing he had to worry about. But this is the crucial point. And I want you to remember this. I'm going to say this. Generally speaking, and I use the word generally because there are always situations when it's not the case, life insurance payouts are not taxable income to the beneficiary. So if you're the receiver of a life insurance policy, generally, it's not going to be a taxable event for you. And it's one of the few ways that you can transfer a large sum of money to your loved ones without having Uncle Sam take their cut. But here's where it gets a bit interesting. Now, John's situation was pretty straightforward. His mom and dad both passed away. They had life insurance policies. He was the sole beneficiary of them. But not all scenarios with insurance are created equal. So let me share another story that talks about the importance of proper planning and communication. And this one comes from a client. Her name was Mary. Now, her father had recently passed away. And the thing is, her father always told her, he said, Mary, when something happens to me, I've got a life insurance policy. But he never shared any of the details with her. And that became a problem. It became this frustrating, time-consuming process of trying to track down the policy so that Mary had proof to claim the policy. And truth be told, we had to play detective. We had to comb through her father's old documents. We contacted various insurance companies trying to figure out who had this information. We finally were brought to our attention there's this thing called the National Association of Insurance Commissioners Life Insurance Policy Locator. So we are able to use that service. And look, it took months. I'm talking months of detective work, combing through his details. We were looking at his bank statements. We were looking at where he was making payments to. But we finally found the policy, and Mary was finally able to get her payout. And this experience taught me two valuable lessons that I want to share with you today. Number one, always keep your beneficiaries informed about life insurance policies. You got to let them know the company, let them know the policy number, and where to find those documents. If you have a policy, your whole purpose in doing that is you want to provide for them. Well, you got to provide for them the details so that when something does happen to you, they can go collect on that policy. Another thing, this is a must-do. You've got to regularly review and update your beneficiary designations. The truth is, life changes, and your insurance reflects those changes. Maybe you've had a new grandchild that you want to name as a beneficiary. Unfortunately, maybe you had a child that passed away or some life change happened. Maybe you went through a divorce. But this is a big deal, and it's something that you got to keep track of. So number one, keep your beneficiaries informed. And number two, make sure those things are updated. Well, let's circle back to the tax issue, because there are some situations where life insurance proceeds might be taxable. And that's why I said generally. So I'm going to talk about some exceptions. The first exception is this: interest. If the insurance company holds the payout for a period and pays interest, that interest is taxable, and you're going to get a 1099 INT at the end of the year. Now, the actual proceeds from the life insurance policy are not taxable. But if it earns interest while they're holding the money, maybe they're doing an investigation, you're making sure that everything's in order, and there's interest being collected on that, you're going to have to pay tax on that interest. Now, there also could be a situation if you have an employer-provided policy. Now, employers are generally able to pay for your life insurance and death benefit up to $50,000. But once it goes over $50,000, you might owe tax on those premiums. That's why when you get your taxes done, when you hand it to somebody like myself, when you're W-2, sometimes you may have heard your tax preparer, your accountant say, oh, okay, I see that you have employer-sponsored life insurance. And that becomes taxable income. So you're going to pay tax on it as you go. Another thing to be aware of is estate taxes. And this, if the policy pushes, that life insurance policy pushes your estate over that federal tax exemption limit. Now, right now, it's $12.5 million. I don't know too many people who've got a $12.5 million life insurance policy. But if you find yourself, or if, politics change, and this amount of this exemption is something that I've heard that they've talked about in the current election. So be aware of that, but that could cause an estate tax issue. And number four, and this is what we call transfer of value. So if you sell your life insurance policy to someone else, those proceeds may become partially taxable. Those are all scenarios where you want to meet with somebody like myself or an attorney and understand what's going on. So I want to give you some action steps. I always like to give you things that you can do. Here's what you want to do. You want to make sure your beneficiaries are up to date and they know about the policies, just like we ran into with Mary. If you've got a large estate, you want to consult with a tax professional to ensure you're not inadvertently creating a tax burden for your heirs. That's the last thing you want to do. And remember this, life insurance is meant to provide financial security for your loved ones. So if you understand these tax implications, you can ensure your policy does exactly what you intended to do. Listen, if you hide it in a drawer and nobody knows about it, all of your intentions of providing this life insurance policy are of no consequence because they can't find it. And you want to make sure you've named beneficiaries. And if you've gone through a divorce, maybe you've lost a child that was a named beneficiary or something like that, you've got to make sure you're keeping those things up to date because you don't want a huge nightmare like Mary went through trying to track down this life insurance policy. Sometimes, listen, here's a bigger issue. I have had situations where they've never been able to find a life insurance policy because sometimes these life insurance policies were paid for years in advance because they were, making a whole life policy that just, it paid for itself moving forward. Well, let me wrap up with a few key points. Easier for me to say than you. In most cases, life insurance proceeds are not taxable to the beneficiary, as we've discussed that, in most cases. And again, I want to remind you, always inform your beneficiaries about your policies and keep those designations updated. You also had to be aware of any exceptions where life insurance might be taxable. That's when you want to meet with your attorney, with your accountant, with somebody professionally. And always, I will stress this 10 times today, You've got to regularly review your policies and consult with professionals if you've got that large estate. Well, thank you for tuning in to our Tax Talk Thursday. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a Financial Friday dive, and we're going to be talking about what are the best money lessons to teach your kids. It's a topic that's close to my heart. My kids are 23 and 27, so I can't wait to share some practical advice that could shape your children's financial future. As a little bit of a prelude, we're going to be talking about jars on the floor for toddlers. Now listen, before we go, I want to remind you, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you personally with your finances. If you're feeling overwhelmed by your finances, or maybe you're ready to take your financial life to the next level, I'm going to encourage you to schedule an appointment with me. I charge $150 for a consultation fee. You're going to get that back 3 times in value. I can work with you to improve your personal financial situation. I can help you boost your business, grow your business. But my overall goal is to help you achieve all of those financial goals, those dreams and those aspirations. So when you're ready to take the plunge, I'm going to encourage you to do it right now. Head over to AskRalphPodcast.com/store and book your consultation. And we're going to work together to do a personalized plan that sets you on the path to financial success. And more importantly than that, not just financial success, but peace of mind. And remember this. My passion is to help you achieve financial success. I want you to live out your dreams. I want you to grow in your faith at the same time. And I know working together, we can master your finances from that Christian perspective. So as I always say, stay financially savvy and God bless you.
Thank you for joining us on the Ask Ralph podcast. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. And remember, financial issues don't have to be complicated. Just ask Ralph. The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media, Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.